Do we know what we're talking about?
Season 3.
Hi, I'm John Stevens.
This is Matt Russell.
And this
is Pod Have Mercy. That's right. Well, today on Pod Have Mercy is a real treat for me because we're able to talk to Donna Wotkyns, who is a personal friend, but also has a deep impact in the community of Spring Branch and really of Houston with her work in communities and schools, which is a great partner to Chapelwood. And Donna, you and I have known each other for a couple years.
long time.
And watching what you do in the school systems and the way that impacts not only Chapelwood, but the students that you're working with. I wanted to talk to you some about that today and just spend some time with you. So, yeah.
Thank you for inviting me, I think. Thank you for asking me.
Of course.
It's so fun to be with you.
Well, it's great. It's great to have you here. So your work with communities and schools, tell us what maybe your title or what role you occupy there, and then what is the role of communities and schools? And I'd like to know just how you got into that too.
Great. Well, this September, I will celebrate my 20th anniversary with Communities and Schools, which is like amazing. Wow. And most people know us as CIS. Mm-hmm. So I started with CIS. I'm a clinical social worker, and pretty much after grad school, I started in what was then Davis High School, now Northside High School, and was there as a part of the Communities and Schools program for 5 years. And then Texas Education Agency asked CIS to go into Sharpstown High School with difficult dropout rate of ninth graders they had. So I started a team there and was at Sharpstown for 4 years.
Wow.
So the beauty of CIS in my mind, and the way we can say it works, is because we are a counselor or a social worker or a do-gooder on the campus full-time the whole year.
Wow.
You're going to have the same person. Now, sometimes if money allows, we have 2 people. I had 4 people at Davis when I was there, but you have those folks, and we have our own office. It's a marketing nightmare because people think you are a part of the fabric of the school, but that's why it works.
Yeah.
And so because, Donna's there every day that the kids are there, and they get to know me and know where you are. And so when students have a problem, no matter what issue happens, they know where to come. That's and nice. I'm going to be there in February, and I'm going to be there in May. And I'm going to keep up with them. And in fact, I talked with one of my students from Sharpstown last week, and that was 11 years ago. Or 12 years ago. So, you keep up with these folks that you get to know.
Is CIS primarily in like underserved school districts or schools, or how does that, okay.
Right, our model began as pre-K through 12th grade.
Okay.
And we are now in 6 school districts in Greater Houston. And last year we served 169 schools. And we started about, might be 8 years ago now, going into community colleges.
Okay.
And we actually started HCC Spring Branch. And then Lone Star heard about us, and now we're in 15 Lone Stars.
Wow.
And we didn't know if that model was going to work.
Yeah.
They're not there full time.
Right.
But it works beautifully.
So do students get referred to you from teachers or from administrators? And so do you see students one-on-one? Do you see them in groups? How does that work?
All of the above.
Okay.
So a day looks like you start your day with what teachers have recommended. I'm worried about Johnny. His grades were great. They've dropped, or, Suzanne is, missing school. I'm worried about her, And so we work with those referrals. Referrals can come from the administration. They can come from parents. They eventually come from each other.
Right.
They bring their friends in and say, talk to Donna.
Okay.
But we do individual counseling and supportive guidance. And then we do support groups.
Okay.
Anger management, girls empowerment, grief and loss, all kinds of grief groups.
Wow.
And any kind of group. Like when I went to Davis High School, the issues were drug related and depression. There was so much depression. I rode in an ambulance with so many kids every year who had tried to kill themselves. And so depression and drugs were primary issues on Davis's campus. When I moved to Sharpstown, they weren't a bit depressed because they were into gangs and guns. They had a family. It just wasn't the right one.
Right.
And so we worked with the mayor's anti-gang office and worked with lots of folks. I did 2 grief and loss groups every week because so many dads and uncles and brothers and students were dying in these gangs. So it just depends on what the need is for that campus. And I think, again, that's the beauty of CIS. We look at what are your needs. We talk to the principal. What are you seeing? What are your needs? How can we fit that?
And I love that the fact that it's also embedded into the school in that you and I have talked a lot about Sharpstown. One Iconoclast has been there for a number of years, but you get embedded into a school and you get to know the students over time.
Right.
And because you're in a different relationship than an administrator or a teacher,
right,
there is a little more access sometimes that the kids will give you.
Absolutely.
Right?
And the trust.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not going to discipline someone. That's not my job, you know. And so sometimes an administrator will come and say, okay, they've been tardy 5 days, you know, administer this punishment or tell them they can't do this. And I'm like, no, that's your job. You know, I'm their guide. I'm their buddy. I want them to be able to depend on me and trust me. And they're not going to come to me and say I have a problem with drugs if they think I can suspend them for being on drugs.
That's right. Or put them in a juvenile detention center.
That's an important distinction.
Right.
But we work very closely with the school staff and the administration. And in Spring Branch, oh my gosh, we have such a family relationship with them. And they tell us what schools to go into. In HISD, it's different. Each principal decides. So it varies district to district. But
I was really interested a couple weeks ago after I had preached about and told a story about a kid named Lejean de Silver, and who was in the Iconoclast program. And you sent me an email after that,
fussing at you.
Fussing at me because I didn't know the whole story. You know, and it's really interesting. People have asked me about Lejean. You know, and people followed up with emails saying, "What?" You know, and I was so both excited to get your email and really bummed that I wasn't able to talk about it and didn't talk about it in the Sunday service. But Lejean was one of the CIS students as well.
Yes.
And really the person that anchored him and walked him out of that was a CIS counselor.
That's right.
And so Lejean's...
Jessica was with the CIS originally.
And so Lejean's connection and really his walk out of being homeless and into a stable life was really through the work of communities and schools.
Exactly. You know, and that's the beauty of, like I started to say earlier, being there on the campus full time, the same person. You get to know Matt because he's there all the time and you can depend on him. And your friends are telling you, you know, he's pretty cool. You know, he keeps things confidential and he'll help. And so when we find that someone's homeless, and CIS works with over 300 partners in the community. And that's how we can do what we do. I mean, if I can't fix it, I can find somebody who can. If I can't help this person, you know, we're going to find some help for you before you leave today. And that's the beauty of all these fabulous partners we have in Houston. That we can do that.
And I love the fact that y'all locate yourselves in really, really difficult situations. Because I think about my own upbringing and even my kids' upbringing now is that, you know, we're surrounded by a ton of resources. If I was ever depressed in high school, I mean, there was a bank of counselors I could go to. You know, or teachers that would have sent me to the right
easy
folk,
access.
But in some of these schools, there's just not funding to provide you know, a counselor, or there's not resources because they're just trying to keep things on the rails to get folks to learn math and English for the testing that has to happen.
Right.
And so these kids are freighted with a whole set of circumstances.
Well, and primarily we are in underserved, marginalized communities. We are funded in part by the school districts and principals themselves, and so they've bought into it, and literally, and it helps them to get really involved and really know who we are. And we have kids that come to us from all walks of life. And that is the beauty of our program. It didn't matter if my kids had different issues at Davis and at Sharpstown, but they were the same great kids.
Yeah.
They just needed somebody to care and somebody to lend them a helping hand. But we're in 2 schools, Matt, that are not Title I schools. Title I is how most of these districts pay for our services, and Title I indicates that 40% of their school population is living in poverty. But we have 2 schools that are not in that situation, and they ask us to come in for mental health reasons.
Wow.
So they were having mental health difficulties and with their kids, and so they asked us to come in with mental health folks.
That's fantastic.
Serve.
When we think about kind of coming out of the pandemic, whatever that looks like,
Hopefully we
whatever
are.
that is, right?
Right.
As we kind of enter back into I don't know what wave this is, but as we anticipate coming into the fall next month and coming back to school, I just think about all the kids that have either just the gap of learning, the experiences that they've had this last year being absolutely isolated.
Absolutely.
Because many times, and Joseph Clam and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, that often school systems are the biggest agencies of reporting abuse. They're the places where a lot of the kids eat the most nutritious meal that they will get.
Right.
Right. They provide a structure for kind of pro-social behavior.
Yes.
And that's been kind of absent for the most part for some of these kids for the last year.
A lot of these kids, yes.
And so what are some of the things that you're anticipating as kids come back that they're going to be experiencing? And then also, what will they need? And what can we do possibly as a community of faith or to be a part of the solution?
We are about to put out, as part of our back to school marketing effort, recovery and re-engagement. And these kids, CIS took spring break of 20, so March of 20, when the pandemic hit, to restructure. We were in a perfect position to do that because we've helped with hurricanes and helped on the front lines of disasters many times before. So we were in a good position to do that, and we made sure everybody had laptops. We worked with Compudent and got kids 5,000 kids laptops so they could learn from home. But whether you're doing a hybrid model or whether they're going to go back to school full time, we don't know yet. So I think some districts just are still struggling with that. But I think what's important is to realize we don't have a clue what these kids have been through, what these students have been through, no matter if they're elementary or high school.
Okay.
And their moms have lost their jobs, and they haven't eaten. Some of them are homeless, and it's been a real struggle. These kids who come to school, like LaJean, they're homeless, literally homeless, but they love coming to school because they have 2 good meals, like you said, and they've got structure, and they've got people who care, and they have a social network right there.
Yeah.
Well, all these kids have missed that, and their home lives have probably not been even what they were beforehand, which was really tough in some instances already. So now it's been way tougher, and there's been so much death. So many grandparents have died that are living in the homes with these students, and moms and dads have died because of COVID. And so these kids are going to be, trying to re-engage into school. They're going to be excited to see their friends. They're going to be excited to eat, but they're fearful. that many students have heard COVID, virus,
Yeah.
and they don't even know what that means. I mean, that to them is very scary, and they're not convinced it's over. So they're fearful to come. Parents are fearful to send them. And I think that helping these students to see what they've been through, to do a lot of supportive guidance and counseling, one-on-one and in groups. What was it like for y'all? What can we help you with now? What are you still missing? Do you have enough food? Do y'all have a place to live? Were you evicted? And then to re-engage in learning, to make that flip from survival to, oh yeah, there's algebra homework.
Yeah, right.
I mean, wow, right? And so, but CIS is there every day to help with this. And we recognize that these kids, we don't know where these kids have been when they walk into school.
Yeah.
And so it's, our privilege and honor that we get to really work with them and help figure it out.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to this today and are struck with a person like LaJonda Silver's story, or have a burden on their heart to say, I want to help. These are our kids too.
Right.
Right.
They are.
And what can we do to help?
Well, we'd love for you to volunteer when the time is right.
Okay.
We have had so many good people call us and say, I've got to do something. I have electricity.
Right.
I have a place to live. I have clothes on my back and plenty of food to eat. What can I do? Where can I go? And the school districts cannot allow the public into their school. They're trying to protect the students right now. We are very fortunate that we are allowed back on campus. So we've been there this past year. And we've worked with students on Zoom and Teams and a hybrid model for those that were still at home, and we've worked with the ones that are on campus. And we'll continue to do that this year. And as soon as the districts allow our volunteers to come, we love to have volunteers.
Okay.
You can mentor a LaJon. You can, if you want to do young kids, we love reading to kids. I mean, it can look like lots of different things.
Okay.
We love school supply drives and diaper drives and winter coat drives, Christmas toy drives. And of course, you can always send a check.
Okay.
You can donate on cishouston.org.
Okay.
We would love that.
Okay. So really the gamut between supporting with monies to showing up and mentoring a kid, and or giving supplies, all that is
all of
possible
it.
in your organization.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay.
We love that.
That's
And
great.
we're all in this together, right?
Yeah, right. Because I really think that as we return to school, as kids return to schools, I watch what my own kids went through,
Right.
and not that I'm a model parent, but we're attending to some things. We have
Yes.
resources to really.
Right.
I just think about folks that have we were talking about this earlier, but one of the students in our iconoclast program that I know really well had to get a full-time job during pandemic just to be able to help his parents stay in the apartment that they're
Right.
in. And his school was secondary or below that, right? In
Right.
terms of importance of just trying to keep the family above water.
Exactly.
And this is a 14, 15-year-old kid. And so as we're coming out and he's re-engaging with that, I just think having folks that could both kind of validate that experience and support him along the way is going to be.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad y'all are there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So-
It's honorable work, but it feels good.
Yeah, yeah. How did you get into this work?
Oh my gosh. Well, 20 some odd years ago, I really was put in a place where I got to help some troubled teenagers. And you and I that's where we met.
That's right.
That's actually where we
that.
met. And Kevin was a wonderful guy who was going down the wrong path, had a car accident due to drug involvement, and was in a coma for a week and died. And he was either 17 or 19. I'm not sure.
I think
Do you
he was
remember?
19.
19. when it happened. And I was involved with him at the time, and I became very involved, as you did, with his friends.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of friends who were fabulous guys, but headed in a bad direction
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we became very involved with them and tried to help them. And Kevin, his best friend, was driving the car when they died or when they had their accident, and he was put in prison, and we both visited him and, tried to help these kids, steer them in a better direction. And I just saw my love for that. And I had never I taught school many years before, but I'd never been involved with troubled kids who just needed somebody to love them and care and guide them along the way. Yeah. And so I went back to grad school late in life and got my degree in social work and found communities and schools.
That's amazing.
And it's just fabulous to be able to sit on a campus. It's like an emergency room, Matt. Mm-hmm. You sit there and you don't know who's walking in that door. Yeah. It can be my boyfriend's talking to another girl over there at lunch. I'm about to, take action.
About to throw down.
Right? Or it can be, I've started drugs and I think it's too much. Yeah. Or it can be I'm pregnant. Yeah. I don't want to tell my mom. Will you tell my mom? Oh. It can run the gamut. Yeah. Or it can be, I've been sick for 2 weeks and I don't know how to catch up. How do I, can you help me? How do I even begin? Yeah. And meeting with teachers and helping that child figure out how that's going to work. Mm. But that's how I started, and I've just loved it. Now I've been in development now 11 years, hard to believe. And I love development. I didn't think I would, but I do love it. But I miss the campus.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember talking to you about even some of the stories when you were at Sharpstown and those kids that just fell in love with you. Oh, and
I love them.
Didn't one of them offer you a car or something?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, that was actually at Davis.
Okay.
So I had one of my guys that I just loved dearly. I found out he was in the car thief ring that was stealing cars at Edwards Theater. Huh. And so I was working with him and trying to steer him in a different direction, and we had lots of visits about that. In fact, I would go to the theater on the weekend and put a big sign on my car, "This is Donna's car," in hopes that mine would still be there when I got out. But he overheard me talking one day to my coworker about my car is about to just drop dead. What am I going to do? I need a new car. I can't afford a new car. What am I going to do? And I had no idea there were any students in the room or in my office. And we had 4 rooms in our big office. And so after school, I was sitting at my desk, and this guy came in and said, "Miss Donna, what kind of cars do you like?" And I thought, this is a pretty odd question. And I said, I like all kind of cars. But I was suspicious where this was going. And he said, well, what color do you like? What's your favorite color of a car? And all of a sudden, the light went on. And I said, oh my gosh, did you happen to overhear a conversation I had this morning with Miss Michelle? And he said, well, maybe I did. I can get you anything you want. And I can have it here tomorrow. You don't have to worry, Miss Donna.
That's just love right there.
Absolutely.
So what kind of car do you get you, Donna?
It's tempting.
And is there still a hookup you're connected to?
No. I'm in that position again. I need another new car now, and I don't have that. I lost that hookup. But it just shows they want to give back. Yeah. And it shows you their value system.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't have the same as we do.
Yeah.
And you have to really work on that.
Yeah, yeah. But their value system is that they're going to try to provide for folks that they love.
That's right. And my local drug dealer that was drugging on the corners and making enormous amount of money, he felt good about what he was doing because Miss Sally couldn't afford her rent. Yeah. She's got 6 kids and can't afford it. Her husband left. I'm paying her rent for her.
That's right.
I'm keeping these people in food for a month.
That's right.
Look at the good I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I realized, that in some of these under-resourced communities, one of the things that we could really do and provide kids with is paid internships.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, and I think that companies and organizations and small businesses, what I have found that these, a lot of the kids that we work with are resourceful, and they are smart, and they are going to work their tails off.
Absolutely.
And if there were internships that would help them kind of connect the dots and become professional, and provide them with kind of a stability of income, it would change the trajectory of a generation.
I used to tell this guy, you are brilliant.
Yeah.
You are running a business.
Yes.
You are taking in income and you're dispersing it and you're doing good with it. However, let's let you be CEO of a legitimate company, and then you won't be afraid every time you hear a siren down the street.
That's right. Yeah,
it's amazing. We have so many stories, Matt, of Lejans. You know, I have so many kids that I love and keep up with, and wonder every night, are they being good, and where are they, and are they okay? And
I think what y'all are doing is, in so many ways, as I have just watched you, and you and I met, I think I was 2 weeks into being a pastor at Chapelwood when we met, when we were connected through Kevin's story and his death. And I have watched you really be someone for kids that have no one. You know, and I've watched you stand in that gap, and then not just yourself, but then invite other people. Invite me into that space, and teach me how to be better, more effective with those students and that population.
Well, that's way too much credit, but I thank you.
It's not.
But it started as I felt so sorry for you, Matt, because Jim Jackson said, I cannot stay here with you while this child was dying in the hospital. And I'm sending this awesome, great new preacher you are going to love. He's got long hair. He's got an earring, and you're going to love him.
He was the lamb to the slaughter.
And I just felt so sorry for you, walking in there brand new, and here's a 19-year-old dying.
Yeah.
And the family surrounding this, wondering, how are we going to survive this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you were unbelievable, of course.
Well, I don't know about that. I remember it put me in a faith crisis. And I remember realizing I wanted all the money back I had spent on seminary because it had never answered these primary questions that were being asked, and were by myself and by other people. But I also realized that at that time that that being able to stand with people at really difficult points, at really tragic and I would unspeakable trauma, right? How do you speak of this? And there's nothing to say except you take hands with each other and you walk through it. Right? And
you just love them.
And that event changed you, and it changed me.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think about Kevin's life, as we were talking about even before this conversation, that it's still bearing fruit in our lives. I think about Kevin and his friends more, and they've shaped me. They've shaped who I realize, those are the folks that Jesus loves too.
That's right.
Right? And if Jesus is found over there, I want to kind of get to know those folks.
Absolutely. And what I think, I loved your sermon series that you've just finished, and it's so perfect, because I think that folks like us are not exposed to children or students or grown-ups that are traveling that life and struggling through that life. And it's easy to be judgmental, and it's easy to say they aren't my kind, and it's easy to back away because you're fearful. It's hard to walk into these situations like that.
Oh, yeah.
But there's no magic wand needed. You just have to love somebody.
Yeah.
And Jesus helps a lot.
Yeah. He sure does.
Thank heaven.
He sure does. Yeah, and one of the things I love about what you're doing is that although I may have a difficult time finding connection to that population, we can partner with communities and schools and begin in a slow process to befriend and make friends out of those those strangers, in ways that help all of us. Right. So I think there's going to be more.
We do a lot of training around that, Matt. We don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable where they're headed. And we want everybody to be as well equipped as possible. And there are rules.
Yeah.
You know, you don't give them money. No, in case they ask you for $100, please say no.
And you don't receive cars, I guess, either. huh? Is that
No,
one of
please
those?
do not accept their cars.
But that's good to know that. So if I was going to volunteer and
Right.
I didn't know anything about this population, I would feel like I'm not equipped.
Right.
That there's training programs, there's ways of being kind of equipped to engage in a slow way that is helpful for me
Absolutely.
as a volunteer. That's
Yeah, we want you to feel good about it.
That's great. That's great. Well, Donna, I can't thank you enough for being here
It's
today.
been so much fun.
You're such a gift.
I'm so surprised you talked me into doing it.
Well, I'm glad that
But
you're
it
here.
was real fun. You know, I'd love being with you.
I love being with you as well.
Thanks.
And, we thank you for all that you're doing, not just for Chapelwood in the way that you kind of help us when we've got issues with school stuff and with kids, but also the way that you're outward facing and really pulling us into lives that we need to be connected
You know,
with.
Chapelwood is so amazing. When I was with CIS on campuses in HISD, I was so jealous of the Spring Branch schools
Yeah, yeah.
who were getting all this help from Chapelwood.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, excuse me, I belong to Chapelwood. I need help in HISD over here.
Right.
But, you know, Chapelwood does so much that people don't even have a clue.
Yeah.
I knew that if ever I have an emergency, and I've done it plenty of times, I've called Chapelwood and said,
Yeah.
this girl's got to have a car. One time I got a car legitimately for one of my students, and you know, who was trying to take care of her 3 younger siblings, and her parents had died. And, you know, Chapelwood was like, give us a week, you know, and I had it.
Yeah.
I mean, Chapelwood is amazing.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about being back in this community is because people will respond to need and to connection with other folks in a way
Right.
that's just like, it's part of the DNA here.
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
And I think that's,
It is part of the DNA. I mean, I can remember when Jim Jackson first said, I want to support Africa. I'm not going to stop
Yeah.
supporting missions outside of our country, but we've got some folks who need some help in our backyard,
Yeah.
and we're going to really start concentrating there.
Yeah.
And that was just awesome.
Yeah.
And they've
we've done that.
still doing it.
Yeah, I think about the way that this church kind of responded in the pandemic to the sense of food scarcity in people's lives,
Absolutely.
and the way that John has just kind of
John.
led us through that in profound ways. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, he has just done an astronomically, outrageously fabulous job
Yeah.
of feeding that many folks who did not have food to
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah.
Had families of 6 kids and did not have food.
Yeah, and being able to partner with CIS in that, and both some of the work that the Manna families,
Right.
that
Your Manna
Yolong-
Christmas families
Yeah.
are typically CIS families.
Yeah, and that's a partnership that I've watched this year with Betty Ann Taylor and Suzanne Harder and those folks that have just
Angels.
yeah, they've connected up to CIS, and so that there were folks all over Spring Branch that were unable to make rent and would have been evicted
Absolutely.
if it weren't for this church and our partnership with you.
Absolutely.
And that's a story that often doesn't get as much press as I think it should, because it's profoundly impacted the lives of families in this community, in our zip codes.
Well, and I think back at Harvey and how John immediately just got on it immediately. And I remember pictures of him in boats going to pick up people. And, you know, I think that then when the pandemic hit, much like CIS, once you've been down
Yeah.
that road of helping in disasters, you kind of know,
It's
okay,
muscle memory, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Here's what we need to
Let's
put in
go.
place, you
Yeah.
know. And we've got, Lord knows, Chapelwood's got people willing to go.
Yeah.
And so it's just, we have an awesome church.
Yeah, it's been a blessing. Well, I'm glad that you're a part of it. So
Me too.
yeah. Thanks a lot for today.
Thanks, Matt.
I appreciate it. Well, I'm Matt Russell,
I'm Donna Wotkyns.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.